Welcome back to my channel, guys. I'm excited to be here today on Sunday in your living room. And okay, I know one of the biggest issues when you're living in a small space is that everything just feels tight. Like you can't breathe and you just want to run. But you walk in and you immediately feel like the walls are closing in on you. Perhaps you've already tried expanding your room with the use of mirrors. Maybe you painted everything white and hoped that that would expand the space. Gotten rid of half your stuff and it still doesn't feel right. As you guys know, I'm a professional interior designer. My name is Nina, and I have been advising people on their homes for years. And I also am part of the top 40 experts in the nation. So I've worked in hundreds of tiny apartments, and I'm about to share 10 tricks that actually change how your brain sees space. Not just make it look pretty, I mean, make a 300 square foot room genuinely feel much, much bigger, like almost double. And listen, tip number 10, it literally makes your floor disappear. I use it in every single small space I design. So stick with me, because by the end of this, you're going to look at your apartment completely differently. So let's get into it. Let's start with the architectural details, the stuff most people never think to change because it just seems like that's how walls work. All right, tip number 1, shadow gaps instead of baseboards. We were just talking about that with a riglet. Get rid of your baseboards, guys. I was just telling my team that we were just discussing riglets today for another project and how we want to color match them. What are riglets? Well, instead of having these protruding baseboards, which you do, and I like to do this in even large homes because it's such a clean, beautiful detail. So instead of having baseboards, what you do is you integrate the baseboard into the drywall and you add a thin shadow gap. Here's what that actually looks like. Your walls stop about 6 or so inches above the floor. There's no chunky white protruding molding, just a thin, clean gap that creates a dark shadow line running around your entire room. And believe it or not, your riglet can come in custom colors. And since I wasn't kidding, I was just looking at riglet colors for a client. Here they are. This is from a company called Fry Riglet. And I was just reviewing all the neutral colors. So you want to pick a color that matches your walls, or if you have stone and you want to use a riglet, that's also a great idea. Now, why does this work? Well, it makes your walls look like they're floating. When there's nothing visually connecting your walls to the floor, your brain doesn't see boundaries. It sees space. It removes all that visual weight right at the bottom where your eye naturally lands when you walk into a room. Honestly, this is simpler than installing baseboards in certain circumstances. Your contractor or drywall person just recesses the bottom edge and makes sure it's level. The result, your 10 by 12 room suddenly feels like it has an extra foot of space on every side. If you're already thinking, all right, I need to try this in my space, do me a favor and hit that subscribe right now, because we're just getting warmed up. And every single one of these tips is going to blow your mind, and your subscription to our channel really helps the algorithm, and it helps us be able to deliver more and more content for you guys. Now, once you've dealt with the walls, let's talk about those awkward corners that you don't know what to do with. You know, the ones I'm talking about, those little nooks where a regular table just looks wrong. So here is tip number 2, Demi-Lune Furniture in corners. This is a very good tip. So Demi-Lune in French means half moon. And just like it sounds, you are basically using half a table. And here's where you use these. Those awkward small corners, maybe next to your front door, or that weird nook by the window where a regular rectangular table just looks too chunky and too big. Put a half circle table there instead. The reason this works is actually kind of genius. Curves trick your brain into thinking space continues beyond what you can see. When your eye hits a sharp corner, it screams, the room ends here. But when it hits a beautiful curve, your brain goes, oh, there's probably more space around the bend. It's the same reason round rooms feel bigger than square rooms, even at the same square footage. I use these constantly in smaller spaces. They take up way less floor space than regular furniture, but they make the room feel very expansive. It's completely backwards from what you'd expect, but it works every single time. All right, so we've made the walls float. We've softened the corners. Now let's talk about the furniture itself and how it sits in your space, because this next one is probably the single most impactful change you can make. Tip number 3, cantilever everything possible. So what does that mean? Wall mount your furniture so that you can see the floor underneath. So floating a bathroom vanity is a very good way of making that room feel more expansive. Wall mounted desks, floating TV consoles, nightstands that hang on the wall, as much of it as possible so that there is a very big sense of floor space, and this will definitely make your room feel much larger. Here's why this is so powerful. Every square inch of your floor you can see makes your room feel exponentially bigger. So when you can see under your furniture, your brain actually tricks you and counts that floor even though you're not technically using it. It's truly pure psychology, but it works like magic. And as a bonus, which I always tell clients who complain about installation costs, it makes cleaning so much easier. No more trying to vacuum around your furniture. This is a really great way for those of you who have allergies and need to really keep a clean room dust-free. Now, the visual lightness alone is worth it. A floating desk versus a traditional desk with 4 legs touching the ground, it's the difference between a cramped little corner and a home office that actually feels like you can breathe in there. Sometimes you can do a half-mounted desk, so the front legs sit and the back of the desk is mounted. There are so many great pieces that will fill your needs so that you can have a much larger space. And speaking of furniture legs, because we're on this theme of making things feel lighter, less cluttered visually, let's talk about the furniture that does need to touch the floor. Because again, not everything should be floating. Now this takes me to tip number 4, single leg tables. Ditch the 4-legged tables for the single leg pedestal tables instead. Coffee tables, dining tables, side tables, anywhere you'd normally see 4 legs, get one central pedestal instead. Think about what 4 table legs do visually. They create this cage underneath your furniture. Great if you're trying to save yourself in a time of an earthquake, but not great when you want the room to feel bigger. Your eye has to process 4 separate vertical interruptions, and in a small space, that adds up very, very quickly. It creates visual clutter even when the tabletop itself is clean. I would also argue that having 4 separate legs in any sized room can become very cluttered once you pair them with dining room chairs. So, one pedestal, your eye just glides right past it and barely registers it. And there's a functional benefit too. You can definitely fit more people more comfortably around this table. And I've literally gotten an extra dining chair at tables just by switching to a pedestal table. This works for coffee tables as well, dining tables, side tables, really anywhere 4 legs would be used. Really anywhere. 4 legs out, 1 leg in. Okay, so we've addressed the architecture, the furniture. Now let's get into color and paint, because the way you use color can completely transform how big a small space feels. And most people get this completely wrong. Tip number 5, monochromatic gradient walls. Paint your walls with a monochromatic gradient. Why? Well, this is what I mean. Pick your wall color, let's say a soft grayish or a pale blue. Paint the bottom portion in that exact color. But as you move up, the wall toward the ceiling gradually lightens it about 10 to 15%. And the key is making it barely noticeable. You shouldn't be able to point out the fact that the wall is gradient. This is actually a trick that painters use. It should feel like the wall is just getting lighter as it rises. And why does this work? It mimics something called atmospheric perspective. The way distant mountains look lighter and hazier than do the ones that are closer. So when your walls fade lighter going up, your brain thinks they're receding into the distance. So it is a very good trick, and it makes a whole host and a world of difference. By the way, you can DIY this with careful color matching at the paint store. Get 3 shades in the same color. Just ask them to make it 25% lighter and 50% lighter. And then just go ahead and blend them in towards the points where they're meeting. Or you can hire somebody who is good at it. Either way, the effect is incredible and also quite interesting to the eye. Now that we're talking about walls and color, I want to share something that sounds completely counterintuitive, but it is one of my absolute favorite tricks. Everyone thinks small spaces need small, delicate patterns, and that's actually the opposite of what you should do. Tip number 6, macro scale patterns in micro doses. So use massive patterns in tiny spaces. I'm talking wallpaper with enormous palm leaves, oversized florals that would normally be in a giant mansion foyer, patterns that seem way too big for a small room. But, and this part is critical, you only use it on one small wall or inside a single cabinet or on the back of a painted bookshelf. A very specific area that will be noticeable. And what happens is your eye can't take in the whole pattern at once because it's so large. So your brain assumes the pattern and therefore the space extends way beyond what you can actually see. It's like looking at a photo of a mountain and you don't need to see the whole mountain to know the rest of the mountain is right there. And the scale tells you everything. All right, let's move from walls to windows because window treatments are one of those things people always try and minimize in small spaces, and they're missing a huge opportunity. This is true for, in my opinion, all homes. Tip number 7, let your curtains puddle on the floor. Yes, I mean actually puddle. Let them pool maybe 6 to 8 inches for a dramatic effect onto your floor in these luxurious soft folds. Now, I know that you're thinking, but I thought small spaces should be neat and tailored, and why are we puddling and so on. And you're right, that's what everyone says, but they're wrong. At least in this small space, when it comes to curtains, try puddling. It just gives such a sense of, first of all, not only aristocracy and beauty, but it has a beautiful visual effect. And when a curtain puddles, it does 2 massive things. First, it draws your eye all the way down from the ceiling to the floor and then beyond. And that vertical line makes your ceiling feel much, much taller. Second, and this is the psychology part, puddling fabric signals luxury and abundance. It says we have so much space, we have so much extra fabric, that even though you're only talking about an extra half a yard or so of material, the impact on how the room feels is enormous. I do this in every small bedroom. I design puddle-length curtains on either side of the bed, and the 9-foot ceiling suddenly reads as a 10 or 11-foot ceiling. It's such a small change, but clients notice it immediately. Now, real quick, if you're sitting there thinking, okay, but which of these would actually work in my space with my layout? I do one-on-one consultations where we can walk through your specific apartment. We can talk about your furniture, your challenges. We can create a custom plan for you, or I can just discuss, what pieces of furniture you should be purchasing or not purchasing. Link is in the description section if you want to work directly together. My Zoom calendar comes up. We can get on a call for 25 minutes or longer. All right, back to the tips. So we've optimized your walls, right? We've changed your furnitures. We have dealt with the windows. Now let's talk about a type of space that almost everyone wastes without realizing it. Are you ready for this? Threshold and doorways. All right, that's tip number 8. Threshold furniture. So I would definitely recommend putting dual purpose furniture directly in your threshold. Now, what's a threshold? It's that space between the doorway and the transition between your living room and kitchen. The space between your bedroom and hallway, for example. Usually we just walk through these areas. They don't really serve a purpose. You're not really parking yourself there and having a moment. They don't really do much, but are truly transition spaces. Put a piece of furniture there that serves both spaces. So a narrow console table that backs up your kitchen but faces your living room. Now it's functional for both rooms. A bookshelf that sits right in the doorway between spaces with the back facing one room and the front facing the other. What this does is eliminate that dead transitional space and turns it into something useful. You're not losing space by putting furniture there, you're actually reclaiming it. Now, just make sure you leave at least 30 inches of clearance for people to actually pass through. You want to activate the threshold, not block it completely. Now that we're talking about furniture placement, let me share a rule that will completely change how you shop for and arrange your main pieces. This is about getting the proportions right so everything feels balanced instead of cramped. Tip number 9. The 60% rule for dominant pieces. So if you have a 10-foot wall, your sofa should be around 6 feet. It's very basic, but a very important rule. Anything bigger will feel disproportionate, anything smaller will feel out of scale. Why 60%? Because it's the sweet spot. Go smaller than that and the furniture looks a little bit insignificant and the room feels unanchored and awkward. Go bigger and you just overwhelm the space with a piece and lose your sense of identity, and there won't be any breathing room either. When you nail this proportion, everything just clicks. The furniture feels intentional, like it was custom made for that exact wall, and that sense of order and harmony makes the space feel way bigger than it actually is. I see people make this mistake time and time again. They'll get a massive 90-inch sofa, they'll shove it against the wall, and then they'll be like, look, I have a giant living room. And it just feels suffocating. It's not that you don't have enough space, it's that you haven't left visual breathing room. Negative space, I always argue, is one of the biggest important tricks in design, and it also works with decor as well. So measure your wall, multiply it by 0.6, and that's your target furniture. Write it down before you go shopping as well. This seems like a no-brainer, but the amount of people that go shopping without writing the dimensions of their walls will surprise you. So, final tip, number 10. As I promised, this is the most important and impactful tip, and makes your floor disappear. This one's all about how you arrange your workspace or task area, because most people line everything up against one wall and wonder why it feels so cramped. So tip number 10 is called triangular work zones. This works in many, many spaces, whether it's a kitchen, whether living room, dining room, etc., etc. Arrange your task-oriented furniture in a triangular formation. This applies to home offices as well. We talked about kitchen areas. You actually work and move between different stations. Instead of lining everything up in a row, sort of desk, filing cabinet, bookshelf, all on one wall, which obviously looks terrible, you need to create a triangle. Put your desk at one point, filing cabinets at another point, bookshelf at the third. Each point of triangle should be about 4 to 6 feet away from the others. This is a great way also to perhaps float your desk. If you float your desk, then you can put behind you, because triangular movement is the most spatially efficient circulation pattern that exists, which is why they recommend it for kitchens between your stove, your sink, and your refrigeration. You're creating the shortest possible distance between your most used spots, which means you're wasting less floor space by walking back and forth. Linear arrangements look clean, but they make your space feel very pedestrian. A triangle is proportionate. It lets you pivot between tasks efficiently, and believe it or not, looks visually beautiful. And here's the magical part. When you set up triangular circulation, the center of that triangle becomes the flexible open zone. So there you have it, 10 designer tricks that actually change how your brain processes space. We've covered architecture with shadow gaps, furniture with cantilevering and single legs, color with gradient walls and oversized patterns, textiles that puddle, curtains, space planning with threshold furniture, and the 60% rule. And finally, the triangular work zone circulation. The thing is, small space design isn't about making do with less. It's about being smarter with what you have. Every single one of these tricks manipulates perception. Now, go make that small space feel huge, and let me know if this was remotely helpful and which trick or which step was most helpful. I'm excited to see you guys again in your living rooms next Sunday. So thank you for being a kind and lovely member of our community, and I can't wait to see you again right here on the Red Elevator next week.